So welcome everyone to the next episode of Maestro Mindset. And I had something really exciting happen to me last week. Would you like to know what it was?
I would.
I don't know if many of you realize this, and you probably do. We record all this content remotely. And though Dana and I have been friends for 25 years, it was the first time I had seen her in probably 3 years last week, face to face. I got to give her a real life squeeze and we got to break bread and have dinner.
I know. And of all places, we met halfway in Austin, Texas. I flew in from Boston.
And why is that?
I'll tell you why. Because of this very podcast, Rose and I were asked to deliver a workshop on psychological safety and leading change. And we did that for Emerson Technologies. And I don't know, I think it went pretty well, Rose. What do you think?
I thought it went really well. And I have to admit, because of COVID and my recent retirement, it had been a while since I was, in air quotes, on stage. It felt good to be up in front of a class again. And it felt good to share our learnings and our experiences and pass on some fun exercises and insights into a career development program that they were running.
Yeah, because that was the key. It was they had selected top talent and they were helping them build skills in a variety of different topic areas. This was around the interpersonal and also just creating an environment, whether it's on a team or in a business unit, where people can contribute at their best and to the fullest. I really enjoyed having you there, Rose. One, it was awesome to have a co-facilitator because I'm so often doing this on my own. But I think you got a taste of why I love doing what I do, because you see their faces when they get these practical nuggets that they can immediately apply back on the job that will improve the team environment and improve productivity. And at the end, of course, the feedback is incredibly fulfilling. So it was just fun to share that with you.
Thank you. And it was fun to be a part of it. And I felt really good afterwards. So it was a great experience and hopefully we'll get to do it again. It was great that it was initiated out of someone just listening to the pod. So that was super fun. So then the other thing that was super fun, I think you all know that we mentioned in the season 2 premiere episode that we started a YouTube channel. And I got to play around with loading some content up on our YouTube channel.
More personal growth, more skill building.
And it was kind of funny because there's a big button on your channel that says upload video. So I thought, well, I'll start there. So I had 3 that I wanted to upload and I did. And then 2 showed up on the shorts page and 1 showed up on the video page initially. And I'm like, I don't know. I think I screwed up. So I had to go back and I delete some of it. But it's amazing how intelligent these tools are now because it just put it in the right place eventually. So that was super fun.
Thumbs up. So we'll just have lots of fun. And we're going to have more fun because we've got a great guest. Her name is Esther Han. And Esther's based in New York, has been for a very long time, and has worked in market research and data analytics for decades. Most recently, she joined Consumer Reports in January of 2018, and she serves as their Chief Ventures Officer, which means she is looking at innovation and developing new business opportunities for the Consumer Reports portfolio. Prior to joining Consumer Reports, she'd held several senior level positions at a premier market research and analytics firm that used to be called NPD. It's now called Circana. Intel bought NPD's research, by the way, and she managed different business divisions there, including fashion and sports, entertainment, and communications. And then she earned her Bachelor's of Arts degree in history at Colgate and has her MBA from Duke. One thing I will do a shout out for is we've had a number of guests so far that have liberal arts undergrad degrees. And you keep hearing how people like to put that down like it's not practical and you can't get a good job. That's not true. Just saying. Not that you have to go that way, but you will still get a good job if you want one. Okay. And hello, Esther. So, Esther, I know you've got other things to do besides jibber jab with us.
Oh, but it's so enjoyable.
But I do want you to know that I've already done your intro, but there's one thing I still need to share. And I wanted to wait until you were on because I'm excited to share that Esther loves stationery and stationery stores as much
Me
as I do.
too.
Love, love,
Yes.
yes.
Buying like little notebooks.
And
And Rose,
pens.
you know that I still send actual cards in the mail, and
She
Esther is a
does.
huge fan of that.
Yep.
So, Esther, we have been friends for a long time, and now we have this additional bond.
It makes me feel really, this is an inclusive environment because I also love stationery stores. And the funny thing is that I don't actually buy anything in them, though. I just like to walk around and look at the cards and paper.
It is a happy place. It's
It is.
different expressions of love and care. And it's a little bit of a risk of becoming obsolete. And I just feel like it's a win that I can continue to contribute to that part of the economy and the hope
The stationery sector.
will keep it alive and then inspire the young people to. It's such a joy to get something in the mail.
It totally is.
They would have to check the mail.
It's so true, Rose.
I'll tell you what that doesn't happen. And Esther, you know, because you've got someone in college, kids don't check mail anymore. Mailing anything is pointless to someone in college. I have learned that.
Well, I went to my daughter's apartment, Esther, who lives in Manhattan, and I opened up a drawer looking for like a coffee spoon or something, and it was filled with mail.
That she had just not even looked at.
I might want to open this, unless it's a card from my mother, because if it's a card from my mother, it probably has money in it. So,
Yeah, exactly.
Definitely open that.
yeah.
Come on. All right, Rose, why don't you kick it in for us and get us going here?
You work for an absolutely iconic brand that's existed for just shy of 100 years, I believe. So tell us a little bit about Consumer Reports. It's a nonprofit, couple hundred million in revenue, hundreds of employees. So give us kind of just the profile for maybe, I can't imagine who doesn't know who Consumer Reports is, but give us a little bit about the organization.
Yeah, so it is a nonprofit, which actually most people do not know. And our mission is really to help create safe, transparent, and fair marketplaces. And so back when it was first born, when you think about it, there was harm and there was a lack of transparency with products. You could buy a car that could crash. You could buy a toaster that could potentially burn your kitchen down. So when you think about the context of when Consumer Reports started, it was really about there's not enough transparency for consumers. There's a lot of marketing, and what is the truth? And so our business model overlapped very well with the mission, which meant we need to shine the light. And we need to educate consumers on this. And we created a magazine. And that magazine ended up, on many coffee tables in America. So fast forward many decades and the internet, we still enjoy, I think, because of our premium content and the fact that we really test the products and services. And we do everything from a consumer first perspective, that there are still people who will pay to get information about different products and services and harms. And we also do advocacy. So we have a group of people who are trying to help change laws. And then we also have people who work more directly with the industries that we cover and try to help guide them on different ways they can improve their products and services.
So you also provide insight and data to the product side. So it's a bi-directional relationship, if I understood your response correctly.
Yes, the way we talk about it is that there's actually three sides of a marketplace. There's the supply side, there's the demand side, and then there's the rules. So the supply side is the industry. The Demand side is, of course, consumers and influencing their purchases, as well as other decisions. And then the rules making side is regulations, laws, both at local and federal levels, if you can. So we try to exercise different initiatives against different sides of the marketplace, depending on the thing.
You've been asked to lead innovation, and that is exciting. However, I've experienced and also seen when you are a well established company, sometimes innovating can be quite challenging. And I've seen it be very challenging for the person who's asked to be put in charge of innovation. So, how did you approach that? And with not just yourself, but with your staff and your team?
So we have tried out different ways to talk about our innovation philosophy and operationalize it. The one I can highlight is we did have a new strategy officer that joined a few years ago, and she introduced the Horizon framework, which is a growth strategy or way to look at innovation across 3 horizons. The first horizon is what you need to do to innovate your core to build or maintain your leadership in that particular market. Horizon 2 is really getting into new and adjacent market opportunities. So, for example, if you think of, Amazon is a good easy example. Their core business was selling things, right? E-commerce. Adjacent business was what turned into AWS, right? They had extra, they noticed, hey, we have this extra server capacity. What should we do with it? Maybe someone else needs it. So for consumer reports, things like our content or our data, that's one of the things that we would consider a quote unquote Horizon 2 or adjacent opportunity, where it's like we have some assets and capabilities. Would other parts of the market or in a market actually be interested in it? And then Horizon 3 is really kind of creating new markets. So that might be more sort of traditionally kind of from an R&D perspective. So using Amazon as an example, again, it's drones to help with deliveries and things of that nature. So kind of really reimagining that.
I love the 3 horizon framework. And I want to poke at it a little bit just to kind of get some insight into how you guys manage it, both for innovation and with your employee base. So it's kind of a 2-part question. One, how far will you venture from your core when you're looking at Horizon 3? And the second part of the question is, how do you bring people along once you decide on a adjacent or new growth business?
Yes. So when we first introduced the Horizon framework to the staff, the way we actually did that was, share at a high level. Here's what we're trying to do. We asked the other leaders across the organization, help sort of recommend some individuals who would be really great for this kind of process. We want generative people. We are thinking, we had our change management hats on. So who are those people within the organization that could help spread and evangelize the notion of different horizons and how to think a little differently? And we probably gave ourselves, I think originally 6 to 8 weeks. I think it took us a little bit longer. I was asked to lead the Horizon 2. We had another leader. He was the chief digital officer, asked to do Horizon 1. And then we selected actually someone on my team to do Horizon 3. And it was, starting out with generative sessions and then starting to narrow down on what might be the most promising things that we want to test. And then that coincided with a funding ask. And there were different frameworks that, for instance, even the way we were financially allocating investments, we were now able to put that horizon lens and say, gosh, I'm making the numbers up, but it was something like 95+% of our resources and expenses are all about the core. and there was very little, right? So that's a typical thing you might find with a legacy organization that has enjoyed market leadership, but you really do need to actually have that top down, a little bit of top down to say we kind of have to force ourselves to allocate to these other horizons. And we talked about, different leadership approaches for each of those horizons, as well as different ROI expectations for each of those horizons. So trying to bring sort of smaller subsets of the staff along and make them feel part of it was sort of the first phase of how we started to get some alignment around that. And then we did actually organize our structure so that it became more clear that I, for instance, was overseeing all Horizon 2 types of opportunities. And then we actually created a lab that, with sort of staffed with more technologists doing the real far out there R&D. And to answer another question, we, at least for Horizon 3, we're like, go crazy. What can you think of? Use your imagination. Obviously, in keeping with our brand and our mission, as well as, sort of emergent trends and technology. We've wrangled that all in, but as far as the process was concerned, that's sort of how we developed and rolled it out and tried to get some more alignment.
I would like to just quickly highlight a hot take for me, and I'm so glad to hear this, is I've seen a lot of organizations say they want to innovate, and they approach the leadership side of it quite passionately, like let's envision what could be, or like you were saying, Esther, go crazy, be creative. However, they shift nothing on the management side. They don't look at resource allocation. They don't sort of think about what are realistic expectations for ROI for X, Y, and Z, and structure, right? So it's in keeping with this whole, like, you need leadership, you also need management, because it's hard for leadership vision to become reality if you don't actually translate it to day management decisions like resource structure and so on.
I loved the framework that you provided, Esther. We did something very similar. There is a concept by Jeffrey Moore, who actually tutored us through the process, called Zone to Win. And the thing that I loved was not only the understanding with the clear financial metrics of where your investment in the form of capital, of resources and investment was dedicated, but it allowed you to continue to keep that framework front and center over time and use it to explain the why behind the shift in the investment decisions, which becomes super important, I think, when you're trying to create movement around the subtle or more extensive shifts in strategy that you're driving.
Yes, agreed. And I would say this was probably one of the more best in class experiences of this in my career. So you could really see that once it starts to kind of shift across multiple mechanisms, it can be quite powerful.
Yeah, and become truly real.
I know this is a leadership and management podcast, but there is no way I can have you on this podcast and not ask you this question, because I grew up in tech, right? So I have to ask you about AI. So you can say there's a ton of AI washing going on right now, but it is driving the market momentum. It is impacting all the transformation activities that people are at least investigating in terms of how to prepare for the future. What are your thoughts on the integration of AI into how, both from a productivity and a monetization perspective, Consumer Reports is considering AI? That's part one. And then a follow on, and I can repeat this later if you want me to. Are you concerned at all about the impact of AI to your mission? I think you said it's safe, transparent, and fairness in the marketplace.
So just to answer the first part, we are looking at it from both a defensive and sort of offensive. That's not really the word I meant, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, we do. Defense and offense.
Defense and offense, exactly. So to a certain degree, this is now the table stakes, and we are in the business of providing information and content, and we already have identified, we need to continue to really reinvent our user experience. You have to appreciate that for consumer reports, and this is applicable to the quote unquote magazine publishing industry, which really has suffered. It's not a great business model for the future. So a lot of what Consumer Reports has been up to and where it's been spending most of its time and money is how do you their digital transformation was from magazine, 12 issues a year, to digital. So that has actually been a pretty transformative set of years that have been pretty painful. That has not been my role at Consumer Reports, so I can't speak from the trenches, but just strategically, you can imagine and appreciate there's still vestiges of that transformation. Now we've got AI that is able to just completely change the game again, as far as like how quickly and easily are you delivering information that people want? Like you could argue we were still catching up to just going digital, and now we really have to figure out how to leapfrog. So we are already doing a number of experiments with taking the technology and running what we have through those pipes, and then starting to go to market with more of our information, but delivered in a more conversational way. We are also very aware of the scary, quite frankly, impact this could have when, we're still like many other brands, we're dependent on performance marketing and performing well in SEO and traffic. So AI, and as Google and other players starts to deliver more of the information that, a consumer wants to see, and it's all kind of packaged differently, where Consumer Reports, best refrigerators may fall in your traffic, your search is going to really go down. So that is probably more of a real tactical threat, which is like how we, like other brands, are discoverable.
And one thing that I just think is super fascinating is the recent lawsuits, because you said something at the beginning that was critically important, which is we have the data. And you see the Times, I think it was the Times, suing OpenAI and Microsoft. You see authors taking class action lawsuits against Google for training their AI models. So I'm sure that's piquing your curiosity as someone that has a tremendous amount of valuable data.
Yes, absolutely. And I guess in the meantime, we still are trying to use it as a tool, because it should also enable us to do certain things that maybe we weren't able to do as easily before. So a really simple example of that is we do create standards and best practices. And so we've moved beyond just hard goods like appliances or sunscreens and moved more towards, there are services, there are fintech players that have entered the market. There are data privacy and security concerns as it relates to like your video doorbell or your home security system. There's so much, call it IoT, but so many products now, including cars, have a ton of software in them. And so the way products as we know them are being improved or made safer are being done through over-the-air updates increasingly. And so part of what we've been looking at, besides like classic testing in the labs for things, is we are looking at policies and the small print of all these companies. And it's a lot of document review. And in the past, we actually kind of were pretty manual, about how we do those reviews. As you can imagine, that slows down our ability to put out these standards or keep them up to date. with LLM, you can actually do that much, much more quickly. We are Consumer Reports, so we are very cautious in what we do. So we wouldn't ever automate everything without checking it. But that's just a simple example of, we do a lot of doc review and we've used people to do that. Now we can leverage our people for completely other things to help evaluate and help shape the standards in some of these new, more technology-driven services for consumers. And this should enable us to move a lot more quickly.
So Dana, what an excellent interview with Esther. So many great takeaways. What did you take away?
Hot take basically was, I was fascinated by their innovation process. She called it the horizon process with the 3 horizons. I've never been a part of something like that, and it just sounded so interesting. I definitely also loved how they engaged a bunch of people from parts of the organization. They asked for nominations, who would be good for this. I assume there was probably general comms to the organization, and that was just a way to bring people along, which is so important. So I just loved that.
Yeah, and it really hit home for me because we actually used a similar methodology for not only the planning, but then the execution of the plan and the strategy. We didn't use Horizons. We used Jeffrey Moore's Zone to Win. It is a book. It's an easy read for the listeners that want to take a look at this process for strategic planning, fostering innovation, while also optimizing your current and investment portfolio. Instead of 3 horizons, it has 4 zones: an incubation zone, which would be analogous to Horizon 3, transformation and performance zones, and productivity zones, which transformation would be like the equivalent to her Horizon 2, and performance and productivity to her Horizon 1. So how do you optimize the current revenue while you're preparing for future revenue streams? And the thing that I appreciated about it is it allowed you to map your resource allocation, both from a human capital and investment perspective, against the zones. So you could just step back and say, I've got, and I'm completely making this up, 65% of my investment in incubation. That's probably a little too much in terms of a bet on the future and not enough cultivating our current revenue stream. And then you put indicators in place and KPIs, key performance indicators, that allow you to track your performance within those zones. And it is not only a great planning tool, it's a great tool to allow you to track the execution. So I love that she brought that up because it hit home. It's something that I was very familiar with.
My final take is just, both of you just brought up examples of how you bring both leadership and management to an innovation initiative.
Just one final comment. I think the conversation, because of her role, was on innovation, but it's also an excellent tool to make sure that you're harvesting your existing revenue stream. She noted that. Jeffrey Moore's process also notes that as well. So love the process, love the approach. And it's a great way to then communicate to the organization why behind your investments.
Yeah. Why did we allocate? Let's keep it real. People get cranky when they feel certain groups are getting more resources than the other groups and blah, blah, blah. And so that's a great way to communicate the rationale.
Yeah. And then my only final comment, we got into AI a little bit in this episode. And I think you heard, again, a lot of kind of slow down to speed up, be intentional with the practice and your approach. And I loved her view on how she was looking at using AI for the low value, labor intensive activities that can then take that human capital and assign it to higher value tasks. So that was my other big takeaway from our first interview with Esther. I'm looking forward to our second conversation with Esther in our next episode. And my final comment, just remember, we also have a YouTube channel under Maestro Mindset and a LinkedIn group. Subscribe, join, and we look forward to talking with you next week with part 2 of our Esther Han interview.
Later, taters.